Okay, this video is about synthesis. So what is synthesis? Synthesis is essentially taking different things and putting them together to make something new. When we talk about using synthesis in writing, it means that you're going to take information from different sources and you need to merge them together successfully and articulate some idea with the information from those sources combined. So this can mean that you need to find similarities between your two sources and merge them together and express how those similarities are shown or are shared, rather, between your two texts or your 3 or however many texts you've got. You can also look for differences and just you need to pull together how these two texts discuss the same subject in different ways. Maybe one approaches it a different way and another approaches it a different way. And you need to synthesize that and put that together. You can also address gaps, meaning perhaps one article addresses a certain aspect of a topic and the other article doesn't. And so there's a gap between the two. There's no connection between the two, at least in terms of that specific topic. And so you would then need to be able to put these two texts together in your writing and say, well, this article over here discusses this topic, but this other one ignores it or is silent on that point. Okay, now I've created a basic synthesis document to try and help demonstrate what I mean by this. So let me share my screen real fast. Okay, all right, I'll see if I can zoom in slightly with that thing there. Whatever. Okay, there we go. I think that's good. So here's an example of contrast where the texts have different ideas. So notice text 1 says, social media allows people to stay connected and share ideas easily. And then I've given a citation for it in APA style. Text 2 says, over-reliance on social media damages in-person social skills. And I've given the citation in APA style. Now, these two texts have different ideas. This one is arguing about generally, overall something positive, I guess, or maybe it isn't even seen as positive. It's just they're talking about the connection and the ability to share ideas easily through social media. But this one talks about how relying on social media too much is damaging to in-person social skills, meaning talking with people in person, sharing things in person, interacting in person. So this one presents one idea about social skills exactly, and this one gives a different idea. In other words, they contrast. So how do you take the two different sources that are saying two different things and actually put them together into a single sentence to present the information from both sources seamlessly, smoothly, without problems? Well, here is an example of how you could synthesize these two sentences. Social media enhances global communication, enabling rapid information sharing. Okay, this is a paraphrased version of this from text 1. And notice that when I give that idea, I provide the source in APA in-text citation. Yet it poses challenges to personal interaction skills by diminishing face-to-face conversations. And I give the source for that. So all that I've done is I've taken the two different ideas, I've combined them into a single sentence, and I've cited the source for each. And I paraphrase the words a little bit, okay? Now, so that's an example of how you synthesize the contrasting ideas. And I've got another one here. Technology enhances learning through interactive tools. What's their position? Technology enhances learning. And text 2, constant use of technology can distract students and inhibit deep thinking. So these are different ideas. How do I merge them together? I paraphrase them. While technology can enrich education by providing engaging learning tools, over-reliance on it may hinder students' ability to focus and engage in critical thinking. So I paraphrased both of the different ideas and gave the citation for it. Now notice that I kind of presented in both of these sentences, they indicate that these are contrasting ideas. Social media does this, yet it also can do this, according to this other person. Okay? While technology can do this, over-reliance on it may do this. Okay? So when you have contrasting ideas, you want to phrase your sentences to indicate that there's contrasting ideas. And you do that by using these sorts of words, like something does something else, but something else does this, or it may also do this, or yet. Okay? So or in this case, while this can lead to this outcome, over-reliance on it could lead to this outcome. Okay, so take a moment and look at this one. Notice there's no synthesis example here. So it says solar and wind energy can reduce carbon emissions. That's from that person. And limitations of renewables in terms of infrastructure and global energy demand. Or sorry, it should say that solar and wind have limitations. My bad. So we have two different ideas here. How do I combine them together? I could say something like, while solar and wind energy can reduce carbon emissions, and I'm going to give credit to the person who said that, they also have limitations in terms of infrastructure and global energy demand. And I'm going to give that person credit. Boom. Now, just so in case you were curious about this, we've talked about how you can introduce a quote in a different way. An alternative way of phrasing this synthesis would be something like, according to Thompson et al. 2024, solar and wind energy can reduce carbon emissions. But Jameson et al. 2022 argue that they have limitations in terms of infrastructure and global energy demand. Boom. Okay, so either way works. In both cases, the words have been combined together and have been cited together. Okay, if I am looking at examples of similarity, like exercise reduces stress and improves mood, exercise strengthens muscles, improves cardiovascular health, and reduces the risk of chronic diseases, you can merge them together, just like here. Regular exercise has both mental and physical health benefits, improving mood and reducing stress, Bond 2024, while also enhancing cardiovascular health and preventing chronic diseases, Zeng and Ryder 2024. So what you find when they are in agreement is that it tends to be easier to do the phrasing of the sentences. You just put the two pieces of information together and you quote or cite the authors. And the same thing, I did the same thing here for this example, which you can read on your own if you wish. Okay. Now, what if they agree on the exact same point? And I don't just mean like they're close to the same point. I mean, they say the same thing. The two studies have found the exact same thing. Like reading broadens people's understanding and exposes them to new ideas and information. Well, if the two sources say the same thing, you state the fact that they agree on, or the idea they agree on. Reading broadens people's understanding and introduces them to new ideas. And then you cite both sources after them. There is a particular order in which you cite them. You go not by the year first, because if it was chronological, the 2022 one should go first. You go alphabetically by the author's name. In this case, DE is earlier in the alphabet than DU, and so Dewey, that source goes first, and Durant goes second. Likewise, if it was Adams and Smith, it would be listed that way. Adams would be first and Smith, because that's the alphabetical order part. Okay. So if you were to do this next one here, forest preservation maintains biodiversity and supports ecosystems. Saving the forest is conducive to maintaining a healthy ecosystem and preventing loss of biodiversity. We could say something like preserving the forest maintains a healthy ecosystem and prevents the loss of biodiversity. And I've got not just one source, but two sources that say it, and I have to do them in alphabetical order. So I'm going to say Edgerton 2024 and use the semicolon to separate them. Suffolk et al. Or Suffolk et al. 2020. Boom. And I put a period at the end of my citation. Okay. What about if there's a gap? I'm going to use the same example. If there's forest preservation maintains biodiversity and supports ecosystems, and then you've got forest preservation is important for the continued natural development of the weather cycle. So these two are not saying the same thing, but there's two important points that I want to talk about. But it seems to be that there's a gap between them. Okay. This one by Edgerton doesn't talk about the weather cycle, and this one doesn't talk about supporting the ecosystem and maintaining biodiversity. So they don't match with this particular idea. But both ideas are important. So what do? Well, I want to state what each one of them says, but I want to highlight or emphasize that there's a gap here in terms of there's no overlap of the idea. So Edgerton, 2024, argued that forest preservation maintains biodiversity and supports ecosystems, but Adams, 2022, did not discuss that aspect of the issue. Instead, Adams focused on how forest preservation is crucial to the natural development of weather cycles. So what I did is I pointed out that this article didn't even address that issue, but then I stated what this article does address. Okay, so that's how you compensate or you synthesize information, even if there's a gap between the two articles. You want to draw attention to the fact that at least one of these articles isn't talking about the same thing, and then you can emphasize what it is talking about. Now, here's what synthesis paragraphs do not look like. A synthesis paragraph does not look like a paragraph that talks only about one article at a time and cites evidence from the one article. It should not just focus on evidence from one article. It does not maintain a focus on a single article, nor does it provide details about just one article. If it does, it is just summarizing one article at a time and not synthesizing information from both articles. Okay? This is a problem that students will often do. They'll go, oh, I'm going to synthesize, and they'll just talk about what is in one article, and then they'll move on to the next paragraph and talk about what's in that article. That is not synthesis. Okay. What synthesis does look like, though, is when you have both of the articles and the overlapping ideas, whether shared ideas or contrasting ideas or gaps within the same sentence repeatedly throughout the paragraph. A paragraph that contains synthesis will demonstrate issues of agreement and disagreement between multiple sources in the same paragraph. Some of these issues might contain agreement from both sources. And then look, I even cited it as if there was agreement there between the two. It's alphabetical because J comes before W, separated with a colon, right? Or they might present disagreement. In some cases, a source might address one aspect of a topic, but the other source does not address that aspect of the topic. These are known as gaps in the research, okay? So you need to work on synthesizing the information from your sources for your paper or your project. So how do you do that? What I would start with is I would start by making a bullet pointed list of the important or the main ideas in one article, and then I would write another bullet pointed list of the important or main ideas in the second article. And then I would compare them. I would try and see, are there Does the same idea get repeated in the article, in both of the articles? If it does, I have similarity, so I can do synthesis of similarity. Are there points of disagreement? If there's disagreement, I can match those ideas and go, okay, now I have synthesis of disagreement, okay, or contrast. If there's gaps, if there's an idea in this article but not one in this one, I can now kind of go, okay, well, this article addresses this, but this other article doesn't, and now I have synthesis of gaps. Okay, so I would start with a detailed list, bullet pointing main ideas and important information and interesting information, and then I would look at those lists and try and see how do I match them together. And from that, then I can actually start writing my paragraphs. Okay, if you have questions about synthesis, please reach out. Take care.